Hello and good evening, everybody. Welcome to our first ever Hayes and Jarvis webinar. And it's very exciting to be here in front of everybody for the first time to showcase our Meander through Africa, but also to give you a couple of updates on Hayes and Jarvis as a brand. It's been a tricky market, shall we say, for the travel industry over the past 6 to 9 months. So it's a great opportunity to share with you what we've been up to. So first off, I want to give you a bit of a background into who's presenting today. So to introduce myself to start with, I'm James Golding, and I am the UK manager for Hayes and Jarvis. So my role is to run the Hayes and Jarvis team within the UK market. So the responsibility falls on sales and the operations side. And it's a great opportunity, as I said, to actually be here in front of you. I'm also very, very privileged to say that we have Florian Keller with us, who is the Chief Product Officer for Hayes and Jarvis. And while I find myself here in Hook in Hampshire and can only dream of destinations abroad, and you can see from the pictures behind me where I like to travel to, Florian is actually in South Africa as we speak, and I'm sure he'll be showing you a few of the bits of the scenery in due course. So firstly, thank you for joining us today. It's a huge privilege, as I said. And just to give you a bit of a rundown on how the call is going to work. So I will start off just by talking a couple of minutes about Hayes and Jarvis, if you don't know us, but I know a lot of you do. I've seen some of the names, I do recognise a lot of them. Just to show you what we've been up to, a few changes to the brand, and how we've really enhanced the offering over the last 6 to 9 months, and how we've actually really invested in the brand. And then I'm going to hand over to Florian, who's going to talk through the Meander through Africa, which will really bring to life that destination, and feel free to ask as many questions as you want at the end. Throughout the presentation, you'll see a couple of polls popping up. And the idea of these is to make it quite interactive, obviously, but also to get a sense of how you're feeling. Because for us as a brand, it's really important to know how our guests are feeling at this time. Are we on the right track? What's the feedback? What destinations are you really thinking of? So without further ado, we'll crack on with the presentation. So as I said, it's myself and Florian that will be hosting. And Hayes and Jarvis, if you didn't know, just wait for Florian, thank you. Hayes and Jarvis, I think that the real big thing here is the enthusiasm that we have for travel. So a lot's happened, as I said, over the last 9 to 12 months, and the team's changed slightly, but what we have got now is a huge passion for the industry. When you combine up all of the team, which is 10 of us now in the Hayes and Jarvis team, we've got over 150 years worth of experience within the travel industry itself. We've really handpicked our travel consultants based on their destination knowledge, and we now have an expert for every destination that we sell, which is a real standout within the UK market. We've really invested in going international, so we have team members around the globe to look after you even better than before, and I'll explain that in a few more seconds. And something that you probably don't know, or you might do, is that Hayes and Jarvis is actually part of the Travelopia group of brands, and that's owned by KKR, which is one of the largest investment companies in the world. And so financially, really well backed, and it's given us an opportunity to look back over the last sort of 9 months and invest. And what that's really meant for our guests is we can really bring to life that first-hand experience more. So it's personal travel consultants. There's no press 1 for this, press 2 for that. You get given your personal travel consultant. And their job is to really test you a little bit. Why do you want to go to this destination? And find out what's making you tick. What's going to be the right thing for you when you go on a trip with Hayes and Jarvis. The handpicked properties and experiences we've really enhanced, especially in areas such as Kenya and India and Oceania especially. And the idea being that we want to really understand the destination, to meet the people. We really want to get under the skin and really see the destination at its fullest. We've also heavily invested in individual trip concierges. And what this means is after your travel consultant has booked a trip for you, you get handed over to somebody who actually lives and works in that same time zone as your destination you're traveling to. So when you're abroad, they only look after between 7 to 8 guests at a time. So it's first-hand contact with them, whether that's WhatsApp, a FaceTime call, or just picking up the telephone. They're there for whatever you need. And we think that's going to be really critical as travel unravels. And just seeing Boris's announcement doesn't look like until the 17th of May, looking at what I've just been sent. But when it does unravel, you've got the protection there of your trip concierge. And then lastly, it's the booking and traveling with confidence. And we're launching a carefree guarantee from the 1st of March. And that's really going to be market leading in terms of if something happens because of COVID, you get your money back guaranteed. And none of these credit notes, none of these vouchers. If something happens because of COVID and you cannot travel, your money comes straight back to you. And that's the promise from Hays and Jarvis. From a destination perspective, just wanted to recap on where we feature in the world. And as you can see, it's not Europe, it is worldwide. And one area that I just want to touch on is we've removed the Caribbean from our portfolio. And the reason behind that was we wanted to focus on more experiential destinations where you really go and meet the local people, rather than just flying to the Caribbean, maybe just lying on a beach. We wanted to get to the heart of the destinations that we know and love so much. So that's it from me. I'm sure you're bored of me talking already. Now to the highlight of the day, which is Florian. So I'm passing over to Florian as you all meander through Africa. Firstly, though, a quick poll. And the first one is just if you could just select where is on your bucket list. And all of our guests, when they've been making bookings or inquiring, say, I'm going there because it's on the bucket list. It's where I've always wanted to go. And they're using this COVID opportunity as let's go big, let's go bold, let's go to the destination we've always wanted to. So if you wouldn't mind just selecting that. And then if you scroll down, when are you planning your next trip for? Are you thinking quite soon? Obviously, taking Boris's announcement into consideration as well. Or are you thinking further afield? Or is it just a case of, I'm just dreaming. I really want some ideas. I want someone to tell me the experience. What can I do in these destinations? It'd be great if you could just tick one or two of those for us. That'd be amazing. And then after that disappears, I'll hand over to Florian and he will take you through the presentation. Florian, over to you, sir.
Thank you, James, and welcome from my side. Welcome from the West Coast National Park in South Africa. Just a brief introduction. I made Africa my home 15 years ago. I normally live in Kenya, in a very special place that all of you, I am pretty certain, will know, and I will actually talk about this at the end of the session. For the time being, I am actually in South Africa, and I'm exploring South Africa right now. I'm going around for a couple of weeks in different places right now in West Coast National Park in South Africa. And Africa really has been kind of at the center of my life for the last 15 years. So this map that you see right now, of course, you all are familiar with. And before we kind of go into the history of Africa, and what I would like to do today is really take you on a journey through, following the explorers, Livingstone and Stanley, that, really explored Africa a couple of 100 years ago, and look at some of the places that actually they discovered as they went along. Before we do that, I wanted to just launch our second poll, just asking you which of the African destinations are actually on your bucket list, particularly. It'd be interesting just to see which ones, you particularly are interested in, just also for me, seeing what interests you as I'm taking you on this journey through Africa. Let me just give a moment for you to provide your responses. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. And with that, I would say, let's move on. So this is the African map as we know it. But of course, this is not how it looked like a couple of 100 years ago, at least in our views. This is the view of Africa in 1600, in the 17th century. And what you can see is, a lot of places on the coast that at that point were known, but then a big kind of terra incognita inland. What you can see here is the map drawers of those days were really guessing what was inland. Something that they knew must be somewhere is the source of the Nile. That was the big quest. Of course, everyone knew the Nile in Egypt, and they all knew that it must, somewhere in Africa, it must start. So that was just kind of a placeholder without knowing where it really was. And Then, 200 years later, that map looked slightly different. A little bit more of Africa known already, a little bit more now of how we know it today, a little bit of interior being discovered, but still a lot of empty spaces. And this is really at the time when the two famous explorers came on to the scene. The first one, Livingstone, you see here his lifespan from 1813 to 1873. What really drove Livingstone was a missionary zeal. And you'll see actually Stanley was very, very different. So he started his quest of Africa in around 1840, when he really came to Cape Town. And this is really where he started his early journeys in 1841 to 1851. And he was really a missionary at that time. He spent a lot of time in what is currently the Kalahari Desert, the Okavango Delta. And what I read about him was that he was spectacularly unsuccessful as a missionary. I think there was like one chief that he converted. Of course, that might be a little bit exaggerated. So 10 years he spent mainly trying to convert people to Christianity. And then he really developed his second calling, which was really opening up the African continent. And the main rationale for him why he wanted to do that was because he felt that opening up economic activity in Africa would provide an alternative to slave trade. Slave trade was the one thing that he really made his life goal, to abolish the slave trade. So he was the first to cross the African continent. You see that here, 1853 to 1856. He went to from what's today Botswana to what's today Angola. Then came back, and this is when he discovered Victoria Falls. Of course, he didn't discover Victoria Falls, but he was the first European who saw Victoria Falls in November 1855. And then he went on down the Zambezi, 1858 to 1864. And really his quest was to opening up the African continent, bring economic activity, find an alternative to the slave trade. And then he had one last journey that he then started in 1866, which was now finding the source of the Nile, which was like the big thing really at that point, finding the source of the Nile. A little bit like maybe 100 years later, it was like landing on the moon, was then finding the source of the Nile. He did not succeed, and he found his end in 1873 in what's today Zambia. Now, Livingstone was actually what brought the second explorer that I want to talk about in this session on the scene, which was Henry Morton Stanley. So he came later, and really what brought him on the scene was a different kind of motivation. He was more like someone who was looking for the riches. There was no missionary zeal, and really what brought him to Africa was the search for Livingstone. So in 1870, 1871, Livingstone disappeared on his journey to find the source of the Nile. And suddenly there were no more news coming to Europe of Livingstone. And now Stanley made it his quest to find Livingstone. And now you can imagine, Africa, finding someone in Africa sounds like almost impossible. But he started from what today is Zanzibar, and he went, and actually in November 71, so about 8 months after he started, he actually found Livingstone. And I imagine that was just possible because they were the only white people in the continent. So whenever he asked, have you seen someone with my skin color, maybe they point in the right direction. So in November 71, there's this famous encounter between Livingstone and Stanley, where Livingstone said, Dr. Livingstone, I presume, very ironic, that humor, of course, they were the only two white people in this part of Africa. So that actually brought Stanley fame. He then, with that, was able to put together resources for a second expedition, which he then started in 1871, again from today's Zanzibar. And again, he wanted to find the Nile. And he actually succeeded in finding the Nile. He circumvented, you can see his route here. He went to Lake Victoria. He found the Nile, only that he didn't know whether it was the Nile. Of course, you saw an outflow from Lake Victoria, but he didn't quite know, is that the Nile or not? So what he did is he continued. And then he found another outflow. Here, you see in the northwest, and he thought, maybe that's the Nile. So he continued following this route, and he came to Lake Tanganyika, and then took another outflow from Lake Tanganyika, and he followed it to the west, the northwest, and eventually it went, southwest. Somewhere along this line, his expedition was attacked by cannibals, and then 3 years later, he reached the Atlantic Ocean with about half of the party that he had started. And he knew, no, that wasn't the Nile, that was the Congo River. So he knew with hindsight, that river here must have been the Nile. So this is really the journeys of Livingstone and Stanley in a nutshell. And what I would like to share with you, or would like to do with you, to do in the remainder of this session, is now take you to the places that they would have encountered on their journey. And this is really the places that I want to take you through, pretty much in the footsteps of Livingstone and Stanley. And our journey follows, from Cape Town, where Livingstone originally went. From there, he went into the, he went along the coast to what's today the Garden Route. From the Garden Route, he then went inland into the Okavango Delta. That's why I said he spent 10 years to be a missionary, really. Then he went east towards today's Angola, went back. That's when he saw Victoria Falls, then wanted to explore the Zambezi, see if it's navigable, lower Zambezi. He would have passed South Luangwa, went into Malawi, Lake Malawi, and then his last expedition, he started then from the Ruvuma mouth, where the border between Mozambique and Tanzania is, and then discovered Lake Tanganyika. And this is really the end of Livingstone's journey. So really, he then died somewhere here in Zambia. So we're now combining Stanley's journey, which brought him to Lake Victoria. And I'm cheating a little bit at the end, because I am showing you one place that many of you will probably be familiar with, but neither Stanley nor Livingstone saw it, which is the Serengeti. Once we get into this part of Africa, it's almost not fair to deprive you of that. So that is the journey that I'll take you on, combining the places that those two explorers saw and what they would like today. There are some of my personal highlights also of Africa. So let's start with Cape Town. Many of you will probably know Cape Town. It's about 100 kilometers of where I am right now. I'm actually roughly here, about 100 kilometers halfway to the Namibian border, the West Coast National Park. Cape Town, of course, this is the famous view, Table Mountain, Lion's Head. I was on Friday evening on Lion's Head, seeing the sun set over there. It's just, for me, one of the most spectacular cities in the world, because ocean meets mountains. It's incredible. I remember on Friday, I was still in Cape Town. Friday afternoon, I went swimming in the ice cold Atlantic Ocean in Camps Bay. And then I climbed Lion's Head to watch the sunset. So that, sea and mountain in one place, there's very few places in the world where you can see that. Outside Cape Town, you're immediately in nature. These are the 12 apostles up here. This is actually a Table Mountain. So you're in stunning scenery. I went cycling, paragliding over the last couple of weeks. It's for someone who loves outdoors, there is no better place than Cape Town. And you still have all the benefits of being in a metropolis. So this is Cape Town. Of course, Livingstone would have seen Cape Town very differently. That didn't exist at that point. You can, from there, go towards Cape Point. This is the famous Boulders Beach, where you can see penguins. You can actually kayak with the penguins. It's a very charming, enchanting experience. And from there, many travelers would do what Livingstone did, go east he went roughly to where today's Port Elizabeth is, where the garden route is. And from there, he went inland. The garden route is one of the most beautiful places in the world. It's similar to Cape Town, you know, ocean meets sea, stunning beaches, really cold water. If you want a classic beach holiday, that's not it, because it's too cold. But if you want like a hiking, just beach walk destination, there's hardly anything that is more beautiful than the garden route. Now from here, Livingstone went inland over those high mountains that are, you know, form the barrier from the garden route to the north. Stunning hiking country, and then going north, eventually reaching the Okavango Delta. The Okavango Delta, for me, is one of the most diverse and beautiful, most beautiful safari destinations in the whole of Africa. And what makes it unique is really the diversity of the experiences and, you know, this charming landscapes. This is one of the things you can do in the Okavango Delta. It's so-called Mokoro safaris. Just imagine you're in Venice, you're sitting in the boat, someone pulls you around, but now you're in nature. And what you will see are the small wonders of nature. I remember once being the Okavango Delta being pulled. It was around sunset, the sun was setting, beautiful golden ball, and then we are floating along these water lilies. And I remember seeing a small frog clinging onto one of these water lilies, and we were just floating by peacefully. This is something you will never see when you're on a game drive or when you're on a boat safaris, but here you can just peacefully float and see this wonderland of the Okavango Delta, which is really a seasonal floodplain. When the you know, the annual flood comes from the Angolan highland and essentially floods the Kalahari Desert, and then it comes to life with water. You can do very diverse wildlife encounters. You can, of course, do game drives. You can do walking safaris. You can even do horse riding safaris. So really, it's one of the most diverse safari experience with incredible wildlife, the Okavango Delta. Now, from the Okavango Delta, Livingstone went on to the east coast, to the west coast, to Angola, which I've also been to, but it's not really one place that is accessible to tourism. So we're cutting this out. We're going straight to Victoria Falls, and this is really the view from the air when the water levels are highest, from March to May. Livingstone was there in November when the water levels are much lower, so it would have not been as impressive. In March to May, there's often so much foam there that you can actually hardly see the falls from the ground. So you often go into the air to see their majesty, their full majesty. So Victoria Falls, definitely one of the, you know, wonders of Earth, an incredible place, the biggest waterfalls on Earth. Is a great combination with Botswana as a safari destination. Now from there, Livingstone, as I said, went east, and his goal again was to open up Africa commercially, to find an alternative means to make money other than slave trade. And he followed the Zambezi River, and on his way would have I've seen those kind of images. This is Zambezi River, and you can actually see on the right side is Zimbabwe, on the left side is Zambia. This is the home of two national parks, which are also among my favorites. There's on the right side, on the Zimbabwean side, is a park called Metropolis. On the left side, you have Lower Zambezi National Park. They are stunning national parks. They are mostly focusing on water activities. They're slightly different here. You can do canoe safaris. You know, there's a fast flowing river. You go down river. You have stunning sunsets on the Zambezi River. Of course, you can do all the safari activities that you can do anywhere. You can do game drives for sure. It's a great place for walking safaris. In my mind, Zimbabwean and Zambian guides are the best guides on earth, and you can do incredible walking safaris in both Metropolis and Lower Zambezi National Park. But you know, at the end of the day, you then just sit here and see the sun dip in the Zambezi River. You might see a wildlife walk past, and then the incredible colors of the sun setting in Africa. So this is what Livingstone would have seen, of course, without all the comforts that we have today. He then moved on. He would have passed South Luangwa National Park, and South Luangwa is a gem of a national park, and it's for a very special interest, which is really walking safaris. It markets itself as the home of walking safaris, and that really is the truth. Like I said, the guides in Zambia and Zimbabwe are really among the best guides in Africa, and they are able to take you very close to wildlife, up close to even elephants or cats. So if you want a really exhilarating experience, South Luangwa for me is one of the best places. What is special in South Luangwa, many lodge operators have built very small safari camps. And when I say small safari camps, it's like 3 or 4 chalets or tents in walking distance from each other, 3-4 hours. So you can really walk camp to camp with a guide and see just Africa as wild as it gets. And then at the end of the day, you might have just this, a romantic bush dinner just in the middle of nowhere, feel like you're the only people in Africa under the incredible African sky, maybe by the fireplace. And, you know, that is probably Africa, just like Livingstone would have experienced it, except that he wouldn't have had, you know, a cool gin tonic, which you will have when you do this. So it's really just this contrast of the harshness and the wildness of nature, and then still kind of these luxuries of civilization that make one of the amazing contrasts of traveling today in Africa, which of course the explorers wouldn't have had. So from there, Livingstone went on, you know, followed the Zambezi river. At some point he diverted, he realized it's not completely navigable, and then he veered off towards what today is called Lake Malawi. And for me, Lake Malawi is one of the most beautiful lakes in Africa, and it's mostly really appealing for its natural beauty, but also for, you know, the opportunity to get a glimpse of life in Africa. And this is a picture that I took on a trip that I did, I think about 10 years ago in Malawi. It's a beautiful, you know, these kind of encounters, just walking through villages, cycling through villages and getting a glimpse of Africa. The people are tremendously friendly. It's still quite off the beaten path. So you don't have as many tourists there or travelers there as in many other African countries. So you really feel, you see Africa as is no longer possible in many other countries. But it's also the beauty and the pristineness of Lake Malawi, which really is the centerpiece of the country. It also has mountains and it has safari locations, but I would say the safari locations in Malawi can't quite match what Zambia, Zimbabwe, Botswana, and East Africa have, but the lake in terms of natural beauty is stunning. You can do canoeing or kayaking, as you can see here, and it has just incredible beaches. This is on the Mozambican side of Lake Malawi, a beach that is called Nkwichi. There's a lodge with that name as well. The reason why this beach is called Nkwichi is because that's the sound that this fine white sand makes when you walk on it. It's incredible, and you're surrounded by nature. There's hardly there's no civilization other than that lodge. And again, you'll have, you know, a sundowner with a glass of wine. So again, that contrast of, you know, wildness and beauty of nature, and still having a comfort and feeling like you're the only people in the middle of Africa is just mind-blowing. So this is Livingstone's journey. He then went to the coast, kind of regrouped, and then started his last journey, as I said, in search of the source of the Nile, which he never found, but he did make it to Lake Tanganyika. Lake Tanganyika is less known, but it is a stunning national park. This is Lake Tanganyika, very clear water as well, very deep water, and it has high mountains. On top, there's a national park here called Mahale National Park, and the main draw of Mahale National Park are these fellows, chimpanzees. So Mahale, in my view, and I've seen, there's a couple of places where you can see chimpanzees in their wild original habitat. You can see them in Uganda in several places. You can see them in several places in Tanzania. But really, Mahale is the most striking because you have those mountains, but you have to be quite fit to see them because the mountains, as you've seen, can be quite or are quite steep. So I doubt Livingstone would have done chimpanzee tracking. We can today, and then you can rest at the end of the day on a beautiful beach in a luxurious camp, and again feeling like you're the only people there, because hardly anyone comes to such a remote corner of Africa. Now, Livingstone then really died of malaria somewhere in Zambia. So he went south in search of the source of the Nile. Somewhere around here also met Stanley, and then Stanley took over. As I said, he then later went on in search of the Nile, and he came to Lake Victoria, which really is the source of the Nile as we know today, and as he didn't know then. Lake Victoria, I would actually say, is less spectacular than both Lake Malawi and Lake Tanganyika. It's really mainly on the maps of many travelers. One, because it's the biggest lake in Africa, and it is the source of the Nile. I would say the main draw of Lake Victoria really are, again, also the cultural encounters. You have small islands on Lake Victoria. In my mind, the most beautiful part of Lake Victoria is both the Tanzanian and the Kenyan side, because there you have mountains. This is Takaviri Beach. I took this picture years ago. You can go do island hopping there, walk along the shores. There's little villages. You will sooner or later have a throng of 20, 30 kids following you, because hardly any traveler ever comes there. So that is one of the beauties, to see Africa really completely off the beaten path. Maybe even join the fishermen fishing. I remember doing night fishing on Lake Victoria, where you basically, the fishermen fish with lights. They attract insects, and the insects attract the fish, and then they quickly go around to close the net. It's a fascinating thing to experience that at night, but you have to be a little bit adventurous of doing this. So this is really the source of the Nile. Other than that, the source of the Nile isn't really spectacular. It's not particularly scenic or beautiful, but it is the source of the Nile. So this is really the end of the journey of Livingstone and Stanley. And as I said at the beginning, I'm cheating a little bit. Stanley and Livingstone went then to, Stanley went back to where he started, to Zanzibar, which of course I could show, but on the way, I want to give you a glimpse of the fabled Serengeti, which is just here on the border to Kenya. There is the Masai Mara on the Kenyan side. On the Tanzanian side, it's the Serengeti. And it is, in my mind, the most spectacular wildlife destination in Africa. Now, let me just take you there. Of course, you have big cats, lions, large prides of lions. You will have leopards in the trees. You will see any animals you've ever dreamed about. And it's easy to see them because it's open savanna, grass savanna, as opposed to southern Africa, where you often have bush savanna. It's not so easy to see animals. So you see huge elephants, huge, how do you call it? Huge herds of elephants. You see tiny little elephants. And then you see the most spectacular, in my mind, most spectacular wildlife spectacle on Earth, which is the Great Migration. No one really knows how many, but people estimate 1.5 to 2 million wildebeest and zebra that constantly move. And the reason why they move is simply because there's so many of them. Wherever they are, they finish the food, so have to move on. So they follow every year a circle, basically going from the Serengeti into the Masai Mara, crossing the border into Kenya, then going back down. So you can pretty much estimate where they are when. Right now we are in late February, so they would be somewhere in the southern Serengeti. This is when they give birth to hundreds of thousands of young ones. But then on this journey, they will cross major rivers. There's two major rivers that they cross. In May, June, they cross the Grumeti River in the western Serengeti, and then July, August, September, October, they cross the Mara River. And I'm sure you've seen those images on BBC, Big Cat Diary, when you see thousands of them throwing themselves into the Mara River, and hell breaks loose. There are huge crocodiles inside the river. There's lions outside, so they are between a rock and a hard stone. And you will stand there on the you know, the banks of river, and you will find yourself cheering for them. If you see, you know, a crocodile slowly moving, getting closer to the, you know, the chain of wildebeest crossing the river, and you will, maybe some of you might actually cheer for the crocodile, others, most will probably cheer for the wildebeest. So it's a fascinating experience where you'll become kind of part of it. So it's very dramatic. But then, of course, a safari in the Serengeti has also the quaint sides. You know, you can have these kind of balloon safaris actually during the migration, which is between July and August, September, October. In the northern part, that's really when you see, especially the big herds of animals in the Masai Mara, in the northern Serengeti. And then, of course, the Serengeti and the Masai Mara have these wonderful safari camps, which are really lodges, but under canvas, and they feel like a home in the bush. You see here an example of a safari camp, and you see it's open. You feel you're part of nature. Even your bedroom might look like this, where you have just a tent, and imagine being there. You have all the comforts of a suite, of a comfortable hotel room. You might even have a bathtub, as you can see here. You know, in the morning you wake up and someone will bring you coffee or tea or hot chocolate, whatever you want. But you feel the sounds of nature, or you hear the sounds of nature. You wake up, you hear the birds. At night, you hear the lion roar, you hear the hyena screech. So you're feeling part of nature. This is one of the amazing things, not just in the Serengeti, in many parts of Africa, that, you know, those small safari camps where you are really, you're feeling you're part of it. When you wake up, you go outside. Many of these camps don't have fences. You might see lion footprints from lions who pass the camp at night. You're very safe inside, and there's always security. So we never had any challenges with terms of security, but you really feel up and close with nature. So this is really a typical safari experience. You know, in the morning, you might have a bush breakfast, and in the evening, you might conclude your journey just with a dinner in the bush, just in the middle of nowhere. And these are the kind of moments that will just stay in your heart, and you will never forget. Just sitting there, whether or not with all of these lanterns, maybe just by the fire, and seeing the African sky, no light pollution. You see incredible clear skies. You hear the sounds of nature, the crackling of the fire, your favorite drink, maybe just with your family or with other travelers, but it's going to be a small group because those camps are small. These are ultimate, like, safari romance moments. And if you want to push it a bit, there are even some camps where you can sleep under the stars. So where you might have a bed inside, and then it's a big veranda, and you might just, on a clear sky night, you just roll out the bed. Of course, you will have a mosquito net above you, but then you fall asleep with a sky above you, and at night you may wake up with the sound of a leopard. You look up, and you know you're protected, so you never have to worry. And then you wake up at the sunrise. An incredible, incredible moment. So this is really it. I would like to stop briefly before we go into questions, ask you which of these countries that we've just taken you through are countries that you particularly are interested in. Which are the countries that you have particularly on your garden route? And these are actually not so much countries, it's more like locations. Would love to see what are the ones that are high on your bucket list. Which of these have excited you most? All right. Thank you very much for taking the time and sharing. We would, of course, with all of these places, we are able to tailor a journey for you. And if you come to, if we just stop the survey, if you come to Kenya, which is normally my home, I would be happy to host you in my home. This is my home in Nairobi, in Kenya, the outskirts of Kenya. And many of you have seen this house. And you may actually ask yourselves, where do I know this house from? And you might, cram in your memory. So I will help you This is the house where the movie Out of Africa was shot in 1985. Many of you will probably have been to Kenya. You would have been to the Karen Blixen Museum in Nairobi, but this is not actually the house where the movie Out of Africa was shot, because at the time in 1985, it was a government office, so they couldn't shoot at the original location. So they used another house, which now for the last 15 years has been my home. So this is the garden where, you know, big parts of the movie are shot. Here's the veranda where Meryl Streep and Robert Redford have breakfast, where Robert Redford falls asleep at the gramophone. Inside, there's the living room where, you know, Meryl Streep tells stories to Robert Redford in front of the fireplace. I would be happy to host you for a breakfast in the garden or for dinner at the fireplace and get to know you and your African stories and share mine with you. With that, I would like to thank you for the time that you've taken to listen to me and just open up to questions on this. So over to you, and over to you, James. You're the moderator. Any questions from your side? Be happy, James and I'd be happy to respond to these.
Thanks, Florian. And Florian, amazing. I think we were on the journey with you there with Livingstone and Stanley, and just to see all of those images just brings to life how much I think we will miss traveling and getting out and about. And I think I felt myself sat there with a G&T as you were talking about it, Florian. So as Florian said, if you have any questions, please just use the chat button in the bottom and click on that, and please feel free to ask us anything about Africa. And I think you can probably tell by Florian's passion, we're very lucky to have somebody like Florian within Hayes and Jarvis, his expert knowledge of the continent, and the guests who go and visit Florian at home. It is a true, you know, once in a lifetime experience. So please, please fire your questions at us. Yeah. Right, I've got some questions.
Questions coming in. Do you want to take us through the question, James?
Yep, I'll fire the questions at you, Florian. So what's your personal favorite country in Africa, Florian, if you had to choose a country?
Yeah, so that's a very difficult question. I think the fact that I made Kenya my home probably points to, you know, it's kind of part of the answer. So, and I've traveled in 2010, I drove with my car from Kenya all the way to South Africa inland, and then I traveled back along the Mozambican border and the sea. I've seen all the countries that we offer. For me, Kenya really is unique because it has it all. It has spectacular landscapes of the East Africa, you know, the Rift Valley. It has stunning beaches. It has incredible wildlife. It has these open grass savannas that you have in Tanzania as well. A very high density of wildlife, but you can see more wildlife than in most Southern African countries. And it has very authentic culture and very diverse activities. You can do horse riding, you can do walking safaris, you can do climbing. The only thing you cannot do, I should say, is really water-based safaris. If you wanted water-based safaris, then definitely Zambia, Zimbabwe, or Botswana would be my pick there. If you just are mainly interested in landscapes and want to maybe have just an entry into Africa, then I would say nothing really beats South Africa. Stunning landscapes, very easy to travel. If you wanted a little bit more adventurous, more off the beaten path, but still drive on your own, then it would be Namibia. East Africa and Zambia, Zimbabwe, Botswana really aren't great self-drive destinations because the roads aren't that great. You'd have to be a mechanic and, you know, speak the local language to do it yourself. So depends on what kind of travel, but if you really want it all in one country in relatively short distances, nothing in my mind beats Kenya. And also the lodges are most diverse. There's a lot of boutique safari lodges and camps. So yeah, Kenya, I'm a little bit biased, of course, but after having seen them all.
Thanks, Florian. We've got a few questions, a lot of questions actually. It's fantastic. I'm going to try and combine some of them because they are sort of similar. So the best time to visit the Serengeti, Florian, and in the Serengeti, are there meerkats?
So best time to visit depends a little bit on what you want to see. So if you want to see them, first of all, the migration is in the Serengeti all year round. That's different to the Masai Mara. And the Masai Mara, the neighboring, you know, basically the same ecosystem just on the other side of the border in Kenya. The humans cannot really cross, but the animals can. So in Kenya, you have migration from July until October in the Serengeti. It's really all year round. If you want to see it at the most spectacular, I would say July to October, because then it's really the northern Serengeti where they cross the Mara River. I've shown you some of these pictures. That's the most dramatic. You can also see this in May, June in the western Serengeti, but there it's harder to predict when it happens, those kind of crossings. And then probably another time when it's really nice to see is in January, Feb, late December to Feb, when you have the young ones born, when you have really the endless open savannas of the southern Serengeti, when you see really these 1.5 million, 2 wildebeest all in one place, as far as the eye can see, just dark dots, and then there's the noise of the migration. You know, imagine, you know, 1 million or hundreds of thousands wildebeest making this. It's incredible. And then you see the little ones, and of course, where there's so much meat, it attracts a lot of predators. So I'd say January, February, but the most dramatic, I would still say that July through to October period. And then meerkats, yeah, there are meerkats in the Serengeti, but they're not like the ones in Botswana, which are kind of habituated, which kind of jump on you when you just sit quietly. In Botswana, in the Mahadi salt pans, they will come and actually use you at vantage points, which is very, very charming. They might end up sitting on your head, standing on your head or your shoulder, just to see. Those kind of experiences you don't have in the Serengeti, but you will probably still see meerkats, but they'll be running away.
Thanks, Florian. I think it's quite topical at the moment, isn't it? And we've been talking about this, about COVID passports. And is there any word you've heard in Africa about COVID passports, Florian? And also, you know, what's the state of play in Kenya at the moment with COVID?
So nothing on the horizon. I've not heard of anything. You know, I just recently came about 3 weeks ago to South Africa, had to do a COVID test, was negative, and you know, within 72 hours was no problem at all coming in. Same in Kenya. When I come back, I have to do a COVID test, 96 hours, no problem at all coming in. So there's, at least as of now, no talk of a passport really in that sense. The infection rates in South Africa have really gone down dramatically compared to where they were at the end of December. South Africa opened up. I was waiting until South Africa opened up, and you know, 3.5 weeks they opened up, and then I immediately got on a plane because I wanted to spend the South African summer here. Hardly features. Restaurants are open, everything, all the attractions are open, all the national parks, the beaches are open now. You can go hike anything you want. Kenya had very few COVID cases right from the start, but one should also say there was hardly any testing done. But there was definitely no like emergency. The hospitals were never really overwhelmed as in many other countries of the world. So it was never really a major factor. Right now, the COVID cases are slightly increasing now, but they're still in the, you have a couple of deaths every day. So minimal compared to Western European countries, and maybe 200-300 cases every day of new infections. So at a very, very low level, little testing done, but still there's definitely no sense that there is an emergency right now.
And Florian, you spoke about PCR testing as well, sort of in the bush, coming back into a country. Some countries require a PCR test to come back. What experiences have we had with that?
So we actually have had guests who are traveling as we speak right now. I think someone who traveled back 2 days ago, and they couldn't, for personal reasons, spend the last night in a city where it's easy to do a test. So in Nairobi, you can actually, I've done many PCR tests in Nairobi. Whenever I travel, I do one. So you get a test within 6 to 8 hours, actually 8 to 10 hours, I should say, you get your test results. So if you, let's say you spend your last night in Nairobi, you come from safari in the afternoon, you could still do your test in the afternoon, and then by the time, and then you get the results by the next afternoon when, you know, ahead of your evening flight out. So that is no problem at all. But if that doesn't work, if you can't spend the last night in Nairobi, we even offer the opportunity to do a test in the safari camp. So we've had, in some places, there's actually a resident nurse or doctor who can do COVID tests, who will then send the results on a plane to a lab in Nairobi, and you'll get the results. I think now in some conservancy in the Mara, they even have a local lab. And then in other parts, we've even had guests to whom we sent a doctor or a nurse into Samburu or the Masai Mara, who then came on the morning flight. The guest came to camp, the guest did the test, the nurse went back to Nairobi, By the time the guests came to Nairobi the next day, they had the test results. So there are, depending on the route, we can do all kinds of arrangements in pretty much any country. Of course, there is a certain cost, because if you do it in Nairobi, it will be less expensive than if you fly a nurse into a national park, but it's all possible.
Brilliant, thanks, Florian. And just on sort of mobility, how fit do you have to be to sort of take on one of our trips? And then, do we cater for individuals with mobility issues?
So we can, I mean, that's really who we are, tailor-made travel. So we will cater to your needs. If you're limited in your abilities or your, I traveled, I no longer, sadly, but I have until 2 years ago, I had at that time, 83-year-old mom. She came every year for a month, and we traveled all through Africa. And she was still fairly fit. And I made sure that we went to places which were fine for her, and she could still do short walking safaris. And of course, we were looking for camps that didn't have many stairs or steps. There are camps that are wheelchair friendly, so we can do all of that. And the degree of mobility really is entirely, you tell us how active you want to be, how fit you are, and then we tailor a journey around this. You can climb Kilimanjaro, climb Mount Kenya, you can do a day hike up a mountain, you can do a long walking safari, or you can just do, like my mom did, an hour stroll in the savannah and still see the giraffes and just feel enchanted by the giraffes and the birds, and maybe a little war on the ground. Sometimes you walk, and I remember once walking with my mom, and the guide suddenly told us, "Stop here, look on the ground, there's a war happening." And we were looking down, and we saw, he explained to us, we wouldn't have seen that, termites and ants fighting with each other. It was a war going on. It's so those little wonders of nature that you see on a walking safari, and you don't have to be fit. You could do a half-hour walk, just gently stroll. We can tailor it to your preferences and constraints.
Thanks, Florian. And for families, because obviously Africa's a great destination, isn't it, for a family to go and experience together. What sort of safaris would you say really suitable for a family with children?
So it depends a little bit on the age. I went on safari. I have a 5-year-old daughter. I went with her first on safari when she was 3 years old. She had about, at the beginning, she told me, "I want to see a lion." Then we saw some giraffes, and by 10 minutes into the safari, she lost interest in the wildlife and was using her mom's lipstick to color my car. And an hour later, we saw the lions. She had absolutely no interest in the lions anymore. But I would say probably from age 5 onwards, maybe 6, some kids earlier. It's great to take kids on a safari. Of course, we tailor it again around your needs. No long distances. Make sure that the hotels have a pool. Probably have a beach location in between. Have lodges that have guides that are specialized for kids. Can take kids on a short walking safari. Do like some games, throw spears, tell stories about local life. Maybe even herd goats with local kids, so that the kids get a sense of what is life like for an African child, and appreciate, how lucky we are in Europe to be able to go to school and not take it for granted anymore. So I think there's no better travel destination than Africa for families, because any generation will have something to keep them excited. Just, I would say, probably from 5 years onwards.
And what would you say for a first-time family? So say it was a family of 4, 2 teenagers, Florian, a bit of a mix, including safari and sightseeing. If it was the first time to Africa, what would you suggest to capture everything Africa has to offer as close as possible?
So I would say it depends a little bit on where really your interests are. If your interest is mostly on nature and a little bit on cosmopolitan Africa, and you want to drive yourself, then I would say South Africa would be a great starting destination. Basically where I'm right now, go see Cape Town, just incredible. You saw the pictures. Go to the Garden Route, and then you continue to the Eastern Cape, which has great wildlife destinations. But if your focus is really on mostly safari and then beach, and a proper beach, tropical beach destination, then it should be East Africa. Then I would say either Kenya or Tanzania, because both of them have wilder safari destinations. You will see more wildlife there, and then you're just a short distance away from a tropical beach. South Africa has stunning beaches, as I said, but the water is so cold. It is bloody cold. I jumped in the water and I ran straight back out. in Camps Bay in Cape Town, 12 degrees, compared to East Africa, where you have 25, 26, 27 degrees. So for kids, the much better location there. And it's both Kenya and Tanzania. Kenya has shorter travel distances than Tanzania. So if you want to minimize travel destinations, and it's a little bit more affordable as well, Kenya, that's, you know, great family destination.
Thanks, Florian. And how safe is it to drive the route yourself? As you know, I love Cape Town, family out there, and I've driven sort of Cape Town, Winelands, Garden route to Port Elizabeth. But what about the rest of the route to drive yourself from a safety perspective?
You mean the route that I shared now with you, or yeah? I mean, I actually drove this route, pretty much this route myself, but you know that I would not recommend because you come to very remote places. I remember crossing the Tanzanian Mozambican border, and no one could actually tell us how we'd cross the Ruvuma River. Some told us you'd have to put the car on a makeshift float, like a platform on canoes. Eventually, we realized there had just 2 months been before a bridge open to cross the border. So that I wouldn't recommend, but you know, within South Africa, very easy. I mean, I'm now using Google Maps for everything. You can get a local SIM card, get local data for a couple of pounds, and you basically use Google Maps to take you everywhere. Very, very easy in South Africa travel. Same in Namibia, very easy to travel there. You don't have tarmac roads, you have like good quality dirt roads, but these are the two really good self-drive destinations. The rest of Africa, you can still drive, but I would probably say for repeat visitors, so gradually see it. Kenya, Tanzania, I would not recommend. Roads are too bad, and you know, you just don't have any directions. You just easily get lost there. But for example, Botswana, you could, Zambia, Zimbabwe, some places, especially Zimbabwe and Malawi, you could probably do self-drive.
Thanks, Florian. We've got a couple more to finish off. Quite a quick and easy one, I think. This one, single occupancy. So for single travelers, Florian, do we do it, and is it the same experience as well?
So yeah, of course we do single traveler. The economics of single travel is that, you know, you would in most lodges you would pay some single supplement, and then we would then probably either recommend a self-drive itinerary because the cost of a rental car is not substantial. You know, a rental car in South Africa right now, it's extremely cheap. I think I'm paying $30 for a rental car, for a saloon car. That, you know, doesn't really matter if you divide that by 1 or 2 or 4 people. Or you do a fly-in safari where you just have a seat on a plane and you go around, then the economics are not that different. The moment you have a safari vehicle for yourself with a guide, it becomes very expensive to be a single traveler. And in some destinations, that's really the way you do it. So for example, in Uganda, you would have your own, because there's very little flying around in Uganda, you would have your own drive and guide. So that's not a great self-drive singular travel destination. The one thing that we could also do is we specifically have some lodges that have minimal or no single supplements. So we would recommend those. But yeah, we would look at the economics to make it affordable for a single traveler.
Brilliant. And getting under the skin of the destination, for you, talking about sort of off the beaten track, what opportunities can we provide to spend time with locals in the villages, with actually the local people, and support them?
The sky's the limit. So let me just give you some examples. So one is Kenya, my doorstep. You could do around Nairobi. We work with a company called One Horizons. They arrange for visits, spending a day with local families. You could actually get a glimpse at their life, help them with their, you know, go into the fields, play football with the kids, just talk to them, share with your life, listen to them. There are many places in northern Kenya where you just do walking safaris, especially actually the moment you walk, you often just walk through villages. In South Africa, a great place, for example, is the Wild Coast in South Africa, south of Durban, where you can do walking safaris along the Wild Coast, a stretch where there's no cars, the Transkei where Nelson Mandela was born, and you basically just walk, and then you stay in Xhosa homes, little rondavels, eat their food, delicious, have their tea. They love tea with 3 or 4 spoons of sugar, very, very sugary. These are just examples. In every single country, we can arrange those kind of experiences, encounters, and depending if you just want an afternoon or a day or multi-days, we can arrange those kind of experience because we are on the ground. We have an office in Nairobi. We have team members in South Africa, and we travel all the time in Africa and can get to those places that take you off the beaten path.
A couple more questions, and then I think we're nearly there. So pangolins, the animal, it has eluded this traveller, and looks like they've travelled annually to Africa a lot. Yeah. So I think very, very well travelled in Africa. But this animal's eluded them. Is there any place you'd suggest to go, put it on the bucket list, and actually go and see these animals?
I have to pass that question. My knowledge of Africa comes to a limit. I'd have to research that. Where I'm sure it's just a Google question away. Just where do you find pangolins? But that's it shows that it's an animal that you actually very rarely see. I will check it afterwards. Now you challenged me to something that I don't know about Africa, which is great. Thank you. So
we'll get back to you. We know who sends it in, so we'll try and get back to you as much as we can. And the last question is what's your favourite local delicacy? And I'll go first on this one. I always remember when I was young, we went into the bush in Shamwari, and on Christmas Day we sat around a campfire and we had a poiki. And at the time I didn't know what it was. I was quite young, and I actually thought we were eating a porcupine. I didn't understand what a poiki was, but just to have that sort of stew in the pot over the fire, I think was a memorable experience and very, very tasty. So that would probably be mine, or snook, one of the two. Yourself, Florian, where would you go?
Well, I live in Kenya, so the Kenyan, national dish, as you call it, nyama choma. This is actually more than a dish, just like kind of a part of their lifestyle where you get together, and it's really a barbecue, and it's typically goat meat. Yeah, and in fact, I was talking about cultural encounters. If you actually go for a walking safari, you might actually come to a village, and the villages will typically ask you, if you camp near the village, would you like us to slaughter a goat for you? And we have done that, and so you'd actually maybe not witness the slaughtering, but then you actually see how they prepare it, and it's delicious if you then have it immediately, and you really feel, and the locals will have it, with delight with you. So that is a delicious local Kenyan specialty.
And another question just come in as well for you. What's the best time of year to do one of the walking safaris?
Yeah. So it really it depends on, the seasons are different in Africa, and in East Africa you have a rainy season, which is November, December, and then April, May into June. So I would avoid especially the long rains, April, May, because it can be quite rainy. November, December in some parts actually great to walk. So I'd say in East Africa pretty much all year round except April, May, early June. In Southern Africa, first of all, the seasons are different. In Zambia, for example, many camps are closed during the rainy season is November, December, January, February into March, with the strongest rains being sort of late December into February. So most of these small walking camps are closed from October, November until April. So if you want to do a walking safari, it would be probably from May until September, October. Now, September, October gets extremely hot there because it's the summer before the rains come and cool it down. So I'd probably say the best time there would be May until August, with June, July being quite chilly at night because now it's the coldest time of the year. So I'd say Southern Africa, generally April through to October, slightly different times than in East Africa.
Wonderful. Thank you, Florian. I think that is the end of the questions, unless anybody would like to send a last-minute question in while I'm just wrapping up. So just to wrap up, and I'll pass to Florian to close in a second, but a huge thank you, Florian, and thank you for joining us on our first ever Hayes and Jarvis webinar. We've got a few more coming up, you might have seen. So tomorrow we're with our sister company Quark, and they're going to be talking about Arctic and Antarctic exploration with their brand new ship, Ultramarine, which is stunning, with the Zodiacs and helicopters on board. I can't wait for that one. And then on Wednesday, we've got a talk for Oceania with Matt, who's one of my travel consultants. And then on Thursday, I'm actually hosting one. I'm hosting one around our private houses and villas around the world, our luxury private houses and villas with all butlers and drivers and everything like that. So super, super exciting things to come for Hayes and Jarvis. And so lastly, a huge thank you for joining us. And Florian, I'll just pass across to you for any closing words.
Yes, so thank you also from my side for your time. As I said, if any one of you makes it to Kenya with Hazen Jarvis, we'd love to host you in person at this beautiful home of mine. And other than that, I would say see you wherever in Africa. Thank you very much.